Does your martial art has what it takes to be crowned the ultimate martial art? Hello fellow warriors, and this is once again me, Rokas Balčiūnas from Dao Paleo, and today I have a very interesting topic which I have been pondering upon for a decade maybe. And I'd like to introduce you to the 9 criteria which to my mind are essential for the ultimate martial art. We have a lot of discussions now going around discussing the differences which are functional or traditional martial arts, or even some things that are distinguishing between Bushido and actual MMA style and self-defense techniques, and generally just to plainly distinguish what is martial art, what is a combat sport, what is a military combat training, and maybe self-defense or even no plain brawling in the street. So to distinguish that, I introduce you my list of 9 criteria. So stick till the end, which will give you maybe the surprise or the paradox of all that, of all these criteria, which actually lead to be crowned the ultimate martial art. So first of all, let's go through the most obvious one. What is a martial art? And first of all, I think it is a physical activity as opposed to mental activity, purely mental activity. What I mean is, if we consider meditation or prayer or mindfulness techniques, which are also developing the personality but are not purely directed to physical activity, movements of the body, these are not considered to be martial art. So it doesn't have it's not enough to be a physical activity, but it also has to be aimed to incapacitate the body of another human being. And incapacitate, of course, could be taking control of the body or inducing damage to parts or the whole body, or no, the ultimate goal could be even the killing. But still, it incapacitates that another human being. So therefore, we can already distinguish such techniques as yoga or dance or calisthenics or sports that are just aimed to throwing object as far as possible, like javelin throw in the Olympics. So these cannot be considered martial art because their primary goal is not to incapacitate another human being. But at the same time, it's not enough to have a goal to incapacitate, but to become a martial art, you also have to have the defense techniques. So the ways that are planned to defend both your body from incapacitation or the body of other people which you want to defend. So it could be evasion, it could be blocks, it could be parries, it could be use of shields, armor, and so on. So all these have to be incorporated for it to be a martial art, because without that, it's more or less a hunting technique. Especially it's important when I'm trying to consider which techniques are primal martial arts and which techniques are just pure prehistoric hunting techniques. So these are first 3 criteria for the martial art. Now, when we move on to this, another set of 3 criteria, we have the criteria, which is number 4. It has to have techniques in a position of just instinctive reactions. So basically, all animals, and actually to some extent some plants, have instinctive reaction to damage being induced or just about to be induced. So generally, if we feel danger, we usually raise our hands, crouch a bit, and so on. So these movements, we didn't have to learn them. We had them when we were born, and we inherited them through our genes from our ancestors. So no, starting from snail, which just contracts their eyes, as we call, when it's touched, and of course leading to us when we see some object approaching or increasing in size in our field of view, we instinctively crouch and raise our hands. Of course, some techniques might use these instincts to develop, or some techniques actually work opposite, like instead of crouching and turning away, actually going in when you have a danger. So fifth criteria is, if we have these techniques, there should be a methodology for teaching these techniques to other people. So teaching and developing skills has to have some system of transfer from one generation to another, from one person to another. And it might include forms, might include some movements, might include even system or tradition, when, at what age boys or girls or both start to practice that. But it has to be some methodology, not just picking up, okay, I instinctively move some way and I defend from another person, okay, so I'll repeat that. It's not a martial art. It's of course some system that you as one person in the world would be fighting. But if it has to be a martial art, it has to be a system that more people than you would use the same or similar techniques in a fight. And when we have techniques and methodology to teach it, it's important to be able to pressure test these techniques, because there's one side that it could be theoretically working, or maybe it was working for one person, but it does have to be working for another person just because it's their technique. So instead of just trusting the technique that it would work with a non-compliant opponent, or hoping or believing that it would work with a non-compliant opponent, we have to pressure test it. And cultures throughout the world, throughout the history, had various ways of pressure testing it. If we could call it sparring, we could call it a game, we could call it a contest or ritual fight, or even some ceremonial fight to pick up champions, which would be leading some people in a battle and giving them inspiration, motivation, with their heroism maybe to charge in a battle. So therefore, having ways and system and tradition maybe to pressure test the techniques, to separate, better fighters from not so good ones, has to be in the ultimate martial art. So this was number 6. And then after that, it's all these 6 points are usually covered in majority techniques or fighting systems that we call martial arts. But it's still 3 criteria short of becoming an ultimate martial art. And therefore, number 7, it has to incorporate training in a group, either group formation or battle tactics, or plainly just training the awareness of your fellow warriors. Not just talking about the awareness of your fellow warriors, not inspiring to be mindful of your fellow warriors, left and right and front and back of you, but actually training for it. To my knowledge, there are only military combat training which emphasize on it. There are some attempts from HEMA to practice formation fighting, and at least to my knowledge, there is a bit of discussion or philosophy around that when we encounter Aikido, which I used to train. And I'm not sure where it differentiates other systems from ultimate martial art. If you are not aware, how can you fight to protect your fellow warrior, or how do you use your fellow warrior to incapacitate the opponent in front of you? So how do you work in a group? This is very important, number 7. Now, number 8 is that the fight system has to be applied in real conflict. Not only in contests, but in real conflict, which is either self-defense setting or law enforcement or war. So if these techniques were or constantly or are constantly being applied in real complex situations, then we could call that a martial art is ultimate. But there's still one criteria left. Everything before that, every 8 criteria for ultimate martial art were focused on effectiveness of the fighting technique, on making possible the shortest amount of time, incapacitating the largest number of opponents. But it corresponds to the martial part of the name. Now the number 9 corresponds to the art part of the name. And I call it generally spirit. Spirit of martial art. You could call it morality as well, or in any case, just everything that is opposed to just pure pragmatic functional aspect of fighting system. Something more than pure pragmatic functional aspect of fighting system. So I could call it the question why, the question when, the question how often, how much, to what extent, if at all, use the techniques that one learned and developed to a very high level of skillfulness. So we could cite the famous quote from Spider-Man that with power comes great responsibility, and in a way that sums up the art part of martial arts name. So one does not reserve from damaging another person because they are not capable of. No, they are capable of, but they choose not to. That is the thing that Aikido talks a lot about. You choose not to harm the person because of various reasons. Could be philosophy, could be legal part even, especially when we're talking about primal martial art use in self-defense. The effectiveness that sometimes goes far from the legal part. You could be very effective in incapacitating or even just plainly preemptive attack, for example, could be very effective, but legally you are becoming the one who is an aggressor. So therefore, choosing the time or the extent of damage or control done to another person is one of the spirit parts of the martial art. And then, of course, if still the person is capable of defending others, withholding the attack or damage done to the others, can you stand actually aside from someone who is doing ill to another person? And this is also the opposite part of the morality. And we see that in myths, in legends, in anecdotes about, the warrior has some moral obligation before the society to step in when needed and not engage when not required. And this loops back to the looking through the whole list of criteria for the ultimate martial art. It makes a paradox. It has to be effective. It has to be actually tested and constantly being tested and perfected to damage or incapacitate another person, another living human being. And at the same time, it has to be mindful to control that power or not use it if it's not needed. So I would say that it's almost impossible to tick all 9 boxes for martial art, modern or historical, but it makes for an ultimate martial art. So tell me what you think. Do these criteria satisfy their condition for ultimate martial art? Does your martial art have the most of these criteria and can be called almost ultimate martial art? Or there is no reason to think about ultimate martial arts? The quest, the pursuit of the wholeness, the holistic approach to martial art is the key to go. So thank you for watching, and we'll see each other in another video. See ya.